to order at 12:01. And if you'd like, we'll go ahead and start with invocation and pledges. Keith, do you mind doing the invocation and we'll do the pledges?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to serve our community. Grant us wisdom to lead with fairness, humility, and unity. Help us to honor the trust placed in us by acting with integrity and seeking the best for all. Guide our decisions today that they may reflect your will and bring benefit to those we serve. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one nation under God, and one indivisible.
Somebody has to start it.
That one is really tough.
My fourth grade self has to like revert back into the.
Texas one. And I wasn't born in Texas.
Whenever y'all do the redo,
Throw this.
can we get like a little
Flat.
just a flag?
Yeah, just.
I mean, you know, if not, like, you know how they do like in the NFL games, they have like the yellow line, right? It's just like digital.
We could put a picture of each one right there.
You know,
Pretty nice.
and then you can like tarnish it with some old tea, so it looks like it's just.
Crumple it up and
Yeah,
then line it back
yeah.
up.
And just
Like most like water well valve. We're gonna
Yeah.
use it right there.
Yeah,
A little bit.
yeah, just like a big, yeah. Sorry.
Decommissioned water
Honestly, there's
valve.
probably someone that has already made that.
I can remember Amazon, about 2 minutes, yeah.
Probably on Amazon.
Shelley can
All right.
really bid on something.
Well, number 3, receive comments from the public. Public? All right. Well, we would love people to show up, public anytime. So please show up
I invited people.
We did.
Invite people.
every time. Every time. Number 4, consider an act on the draft water reclamation facility number 1 decision matrix.
All
All
right.
right. Here's the meat and potatoes.
Yep, so, as of last month, I'd asked for comments. I received comments from a handful of different directors. Passed those on to the engineering firm Carollo. They went through all the comments and then basically refined the matrix that you saw last month. So, we emailed that out, I think, last week, but, you'll have, what's new is, well, first off, there was 7 criteria. They've kind of combined and cleaned those up. So there's 6. And then they also created a definition sheet for the criteria. So we didn't have that last month. That's going to be key. Because it really simplifies trying to sort through the sub criteria, which we really, so then they made the corresponding changes, obviously, to the comparison worksheet. So what I think most of the districts have done, or all of them now so far, is folks might have come in with theirs already filled out. And then each district kind of just basically went down the list and kind of discussed it amongst yourself. Some of them are easier. So there's going to be a lot of, yep, we all agreed. Some of them will be kind of 2-2, and then there was conversation. Okay, some folks might say, well, tell me about why you chose that, because I'm here. And some people, go back and forth and change their minds on certain things. So some of them are easier, some of them are a little more complicated, but it's been a real good organic discussion amongst all the boards, just amongst themselves to try to fill this thing out. So it works pretty well.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna be very organic. I'm not gonna pretend to say that this is not a little daunting to my new director eyes. So
Yeah, it is.
looking at it through a lens of feeling a little less of a veteran here and understanding, not just, I get bidding. I do RFPs all the time, so but I understand objectively trying to score and assess things, but the subject matter is a little.
Yeah.
And in that regard, what I've done to help is when we get to a spot where we need some clarification, I've kind of chimed in to try to fill in the gaps. There was a couple districts that before they jumped in, they actually read this together. And so that we could hear it beforehand. If you've already done that, then I mean, it's
I
up
don't
to y'all.
think that's necessary.
Yeah, it's y'all's choice for sure.
Well, you want to go ahead and just dive in to the criteria sheet, or did y'all have different ideas?
Well, I guess, Mike, I have a question though. Without having the report back, I guess I'm trying to connect it to, I mean, we don't have their findings, their report, or anything else that we could read through first and then turn around and take that and look back at this and make the connections. To me, it seems like this is maybe a little bit of a cart before the horse, unless I don't understand the process or I don't understand how the matrix is going to turn around and help drive the analysis of the report. And
You don't want so this is to identify what's important to you as a district or as an individual. And so you don't want to see the report before you do that, because then that can skew the results. If you come into a particular option believing you like something one or the other, then that could definitely skew how you fill this out. This is more in general terms, regardless of how the options come out. What do you value more, life cycle cost or this, or, those different
Right.
comparisons?
Okay.
This will not be given to them, given to Corello until the end of January. So what they reported was they don't need it till the end of January, because they'll be pretty much done with their option analysis. And then in February, they will be basically inputting all this data into the software and then putting it up against the 4 options to have a draft report in March.
So
So that's the
to
time.
restate in layman's terms, we are not evaluating dollars. We're not looking and saying at a line item level. We're literally looking at the categories that they're being asked to bid on in buckets. And we're saying that one is the most important thing, right? I mean, we're basically saying,
It's
We're
much
applying-
more subjective than objective.
yeah, we're applying our weighting to how then they're going to lay that over the top of these and then come back and say, here's how they line up together.
Right.
We hold them up to the light.
Yeah, so, just for instance, the result is majority of the worksheets classified cost as the most important thing.
Yeah, life cycle cost.
Right, so then they'll put that in, and then that will be utilized against the 4 options. And that will help spit out, the option that more aligns with that preference.
Because
I mean, this is exactly what happened before I was on the board when we did it with Reese and Nichols,
Right.
almost 4 years ago. So, I mean, we're right back where we were
So it's meant to
4
take,
years ago.
we're applying a subjective lens of prioritization to try to make it as objective when they then say, everybody's inputs
Mhm.
here. Here's how the most critical things in the force order rankings. So then you can look at those dollar amounts for those more critical items and, it just adds a weight to it, right? Okay, so.
Yep.
but at the end of the day, right, that this whole process is just to provide us more feedback, but our ultimate decision-making is going to be entirely subjective and based on what we decide, and that this doesn't really drive the decision, but it helps to complement the decision.
It's meant to inform the decision. I would think this is meant, when we deal with RPs, and this is a classic thing, because you introduce subjectivity when you talk about weighting or prioritization or criteria balancing. But at the end of the day, you still make a decision based upon whatever the numbers are.
Yeah, where this was born out of was, this facility has been analyzed 4 other times over 10 years. And no decision has continued to be made.
10 years.
Yeah, since 2014.
You started looking at it, yeah.
So
Yep.
there was concern across the trustees that, we're going to do it a 5th time. Now, what's to say that we're going to make a decision now? Because the plant's getting worse and worse and worse. And so they asked for Corello to provide a tool, which is what this came out, that they've used before in other, facilities, other decisions that other municipalities have had to make. So to help guide that decision when it comes. Ultimately, sure. I mean, I think there's some trustees that the expectation is we agree to use this. Are we not going to use this or not? And a couple are kind of floundering right now, but because they want a specific outcome. And others are saying, yeah, we agreed to use this. We all have an insight or, our input in it. So let's see what it does, you know? And so it's just gonna be how it comes out.
Well, so, I mean, we're gonna do this. We're gonna submit our results at the end of January. They're gonna spend the next couple months putting in the data. They're gonna give us a final result sometime around Labor Day, roughly.
Earlier than that, but yeah, you
Yeah.
probably, hopefully June.
Roughly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then at that point, we'll see where the four options stack out at. And then we still have the ability to still choose. It's not going to be, hey, this is what you pick. There's no decision. There's still going to be a final decision, but there's going to be data behind the decision without us being, without us, swaying that decision. So
Yeah.
I'd say let's look at the exercise and do our very best. And again, it's our chances are one piece of the Woodlands to put in our input, and then we move forward with what our thoughts are. We're five people from five different walks of life, so we represent the people. We're entrusted with a decision. We need to make a decision.
So is the goal today that we submit 139
I'll
or
be helping and
we're
listening.
coalescing one unified
Mhm.
response from
Yeah,
139?
and I'll
That's what we
keep
have to
track,
do.
and at the end, I'll recite it back to you to make sure I got it right.
Okay.
And then we'll go. And so, if it's kind of split, then there's conversation. And if there's a winning vote to make it 3, then so be it. And a lot of them are 5-0 and some of them are going to be and we've seen some
Right.
very surprising results that shock some folks, quite frankly. So it's fun. It's fun to go through.
I
It is.
don't think we need to read all the
There's
definitions,
not
but
a
it-
right answer. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's what you want. It's
Yeah.
not there's not one answer.
if you could provide a little context for me on number 2, I just want to be clear when we say operations and maintenance considerations. I get the complexity when they talk about as an alternative, but does the alternative require peak flow storage? Can the plant operate in manual mode in the event of a SCADA outage? I mean, can you provide some color around those examples? Just
Sure. Yeah, so think of this as, kind of after it's complete, what are we gonna have to deal with? Is this gonna be a technology that is gonna require more manpower? Is it gonna be, or not? Is it going to be something that needs a lot more training, which is temporary, but still will be factored in over the years, as folks come and go that are operating it? Is there a certain level of automation that perhaps would reduce that manpower and, the O&M cost and responsibilities? So that's kind of the general way of thinking of it is how is this going to be difficult and costly to O&M after it's completed?
So maybe where I was going was thank you for that clarity, but just looking at the first one as kind of an example is usually that's how when people are like, help us get started here. And so when we're saying criteria 1 versus criteria 2, that is basically saying the 50-year cost, present day dollar value, right, of the proposal versus the operational and maintenance aspect. Which one is more important or critical as a lever when we're evaluating a solution from next spring?
I mean, that's going to be different for the 5 of us and the 9 different MUDs.
Sure.
I mean, that's everyone's opinion.
And
But we have to come up with one.
We do.
right
and
now.
something else to note too is every one of these has some level of cost implications. So they're not completely independent. If you make it more safe, it might be more expensive.
Sure.
Or if you make it more operationally efficient, that may be more expensive, so there definitely are some cost implications, but the overall life cycle cost is kind of that initial.
Yeah. Sticker shock.
Correct.
The big
Right.
ticket that sells newspapers.
So
Yeah.
number 1, lifestyle cost versus,
Life cycle.
life cycle cost versus operations and maintenance consideration.
You just want to,
My thought is, do you want to go left to right or?
yeah, I think we just kind of go down and see if we have any first impressions, and it may just be a unified thing. I mean, we may not have.
Yeah, just gotta say who's for number 1, who's for number 2,
Cool.
who's for number 3, who's for
Yeah.
number 4.
All right.
Compare 1 to 2.
If
Right.
you get stuck, then you can back up and talk.
Let's do the first one then. Who's for number 1?
As far as comparing 1 to 2, I think for me, 1 is a bigger consideration than
Okay.
2.
Who's for number 2?
Guys, we're asking y'all.
Everybody.
Yeah,
This
sorry.
is a workshop.
Oh, yeah, no, I know, yeah.
So if you're looking at option, criteria 1 versus criteria 2, which one has more weight in your mind?
I mean, I think one thing to consider is operations and maintenance, whatever level we land on, it's going to always meet required standards by the state. So there's nothing, even if we say, hey, we want the least, the cheapest option possible on everything, it's still going to meet all minimum standards by the state. Regardless, all we're looking for is minimum or above. So
So
let's do the first one again. Life cycle cost, number 1. Who's for number 1?
I am for number 1.
All right. Who's for number 2?
We have a clear
All right. Number
preference
1.
on that line item.
All right. Second one, life cycle cost versus use of existing infrastructure.
And so to be clear, when we think about the criteria of it's maximizing current, whatever that might mean, if that's remediation and, if it requires
Equipment,
Yeah, just-
buildings.
Just remember, there's 4 options being evaluated. 2 of them utilize the plant that's sitting there and either repairing it in place or replacing it all entirely while it's running. The other 2 options are building a new one right beside it. So as far as utilizing existing facilities, one's not going to use much at all. One will best it can use as much as it can, if possible, of the existing facilities.
This is probably the hardest one I have.
So, yeah, I mean, if we look at life cycle cost, we have to look long-term on that one, versus, potentially giving up a few years of existing infrastructure. But if we don't do it now, does inflation inflate that cost to make it more expensive than it would be if we were to give up that cost and give up that existing value now for the perceived expense that would be inflated over future years, right? Do you, do you continue renting your house for a few more years, or do you bite the bullet and move forward?
Well, I don't like that you put it like that. It just makes it a little bit harder, Sean.
Well, and
You're right. That's,
I mean, that's,
because you should buy.
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll add the flip side color to that. I mean, fundamentally, it's evaluating the present utility and is there more life to be wrung out of existing infrastructure? Where do those lines intersect? And I think that's where we've been caught up in a feedback loop to a degree. But this is the one I struggle the hardest with, because I'm like, I think depending on how I am asked the question, I kind of answer it differently.
I agree with you there, because like I was going to go one way and then Sean says his rent or buy, and it's like, oh, wait, no, I should go the other way.
I think
But-
it's number 1,
All right.
because, okay, use of existing infrastructure, if we continue to use it the way, if I'm reading it right, use it the way it is right now, it's gonna cost us more money in the long run. Am I looking at that the wrong way?
No,
Like,
it's not
okay, use of
necessarily-
existing infrastructure,
I don't think we know if it's gonna cost us more money. We don't know.
well, I'm going,
Unless I'm
okay, the
misunderstanding.
fact
Yes,
that something needs to be done right now, and we don't do anything, it's gonna cost us more money in the long run, right? Am I looking at?
Usually, we don't know that yet, but those of us that have been in the field for a long time would agree that that's likely going to happen.
Yeah.
The
Because you
assumption
can-
is
you can
that the
get a-
cost of a good tomorrow is more expensive than the good today. So you have to evaluate what is the perceived value of keeping the current good, and does that over value the potential to cut out what you're doing now, give up the value that is still available
Mhm.
to then buy a new product that would potentially be cheaper today versus tomorrow, and give up certain today for what you'd assume is certain in the future. So it's a very difficult question, but it's
The unknowns.
I mean, it is what we are elected for. to make a decision at the best effort and, you know, based upon what our constituents have asked us to do.
Yeah,
It is not easy. Not easy at all.
It's real
yeah, I
tricky.
mean, this gets to the point where the car I'm driving today,
Yeah.
I can keep driving it tomorrow, but I know that the more miles I put on it, there's going to be maintenance. There's going to be costs associated with that. And that starts to, there is a curve. But it doesn't mean there's not utility left in the life of that car. I know that if I buy a new car, but I don't buy a new car every 4 years. It's like, when do those lines of comfort intersect where I know that I'm throwing money at a bad deal?
Yeah.
But these are long-term strategic capital expenditures that we're talking about, 40, 50 years of utility, which we are now approaching, with the life of what we're seeing. So to me, when I look at this, I still am more inclined to look at number one as being a priority, because I think the overall cost influences my decision in as much as understanding, because we can see, we hear what the actual, what the running 1-3 year report of maintenance is. We see what those things are. But if you tell me it's $1 or it's $1 million, I mean, that changes the calculus in my evaluation of what that maintenance utility cost of the time value dollar is for me. So,
Thoughts,
What are you thinking, Keith?
but convince me otherwise.
I'm a data-driven person and I understand the exercise a lot more, but I struggle with this process of, I want to see the report and I want to ask questions of the report. And to me, I
I don't think we're
sitting
gonna
here,
get
yeah, sitting here and trying to do this at this stage, because there's so many variables on the
Right.
cost of this, on, building a new facility next door where you can, not interrupt the process of the one that's there, and a new facility will have less, ideally will have less maintenance and less personnel to run in the future. It's more, to me, the biggest decision between the two is that if you build a new facility, it's more predictable on the life cycle because everything is new. Whereas if you maintain the old system,
Right.
you're going to have unknown problems in the future and unknown breakdowns that are going to be less plannable, less predictable, but it could be, but to me, I would think that your cost value of, over time is that on a financial side, if I were to look at the numbers, I would still think that repairing or replacing in place is going to be cheaper in the long run. But, I'm thinking about money, but from our operational standpoint, I could understand why everybody in the business and everybody that has to maintain it's going to want a brand new one.
Yeah.
It's going to be way easier to manage over the next 50 years. And so until I see numbers, I just kind of struggle with that. But
So the use of existing infrastructure it's right now, we're talking about whether we're going to replace it or repair it, right?
That is what
Okay.
that question is. That is what that question is
or
referring to.
build a new one next door to it.
But
And there's so many issues with the construction process and updating of the one that's in use, because my understanding is that it's got to basically continue to stay mostly running the whole
Yeah.
time, and you have to be able to do that while operating it. I'd be interested to see what the math looks like on the number of people required to run the system that's there now versus the manpower and cost that it takes to run a brand new one, because your labor costs are going to continue to go up. And
Don't disagree with you. So, and I'm just mindful of time. So when we look at this, do we let's just take a vote and see who thinks 1 is more important than 3 and 3 is more important than 1.
I think we just have to hash these out. And
I'm just saying, do we have a consensus and we don't know it?
Yeah.
let's vote.
And then if we don't, it's like, okay,
Let's vote. Who's in favor of criteria 1?
yeah, I said 1, but and I'll stick to that.
I'll be one.
There you go.
All right.
1.
Sure.
Because Keith, I think we all agree, because we're all in perfect alignment that, man, this is bigger than just a binary, this, that. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of subtext here. So,
a lot.
yeah.
It's hard.
that will add up into the overall cost over a long period of time.
I mean, that's why we finished the meetings at SGRA when I first started and came to one decision, and then we had two decisions. Now we're back to four decisions. Because we
Ignored it for the camera, but-
we had 2 years and we had 11 decisions, and we got down to one, and then we went to two and went four, and now we're back to zero. So we kind of have to move forward, and it's difficult. It's not easy. It's
I'll tell
really,
you-
really hard.
I'll tell you that in a different light, and I'll use a different example, but Conroe ISD, they wanted to postpone and nobody wanted to spend the money on building new schools and didn't want to pass bonds. And then they let it get to the point where it's just a critical problem now.
Yep.
And now the cost to build a school is exponentially higher because of inflation.
Just waited 7-8 years.
Yeah.
We have no idea how bad inflation or better than inflation will be over time,
Yeah.
but certainly it's more predictable now if you decide that you're gonna build it now than if you decide to build it in the future.
I would agree,
Yeah.
100%.
I agree with that too.
And I think that's why a lot of the people in our particular community in Harper's Landing, their kids, along with my daughters, they go to these wonderful schools, but they have to go into a trailer park, into a portable.
Yeah.
To get an education, and they don't have secure doors. So 100% agree. I pay the property taxes, and my kids aren't even inside a school building. They're in a portable building, so
Are you serious?
100% serious of how.
A pal.
How?
Yeah, because you're overflowing.
100%.
I know my kids are,
It happened. So
It's,
she doesn't even go inside except for lunch, except for lunch. So
Wow.
I'm all for number one. So,
All right.
all right, next one, life cycle costs versus safety. I'm gonna say real quick, my vote's for safety.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, safety.
it's like, is either option really putting anybody's safety at risk? And I guess maybe
I'm not gonna put someone's safety at risk.
I just,
Yeah, no. Safety.
Okay. Next one, life cycle costs versus constructability and sequencing. Well,
yeah.
I don't know anything about construction,
Yeah.
so how complex will the?
Just spoke to a little bit about
I
what you were
can
talking about.
tell you that from a management and operations and construction and everything else, it'd be a exponentially easier on everybody involved if they build a new one next door to it than trying to repair or replace in place while in an operating facility. There's no
Cool.
question in my mind that trying to manage that is very complicated.
So in your mind, weighting the sequencing or the duality of solutions is more has a higher impact than potentially the overall cost of the
I'm not sure if I understand your question. Say that again.
entire cost of replace is basically what life cycle cost is, right? But and you're saying in the short term, it's important to understand how time and cost is if we are, whatever our option is, it takes 4 times as long to do it because we're going to repair in place and that takes a lot of
Yeah, I think
time and delay.
If they repair or replace in place, I mean, they're only gonna be able to do like, I would think, I mean, I'd have to see the construction plan, but they're not gonna be able to just to go in and just do everything at once. They're gonna have to work through the modules and sections and it's gonna take,
Redundancy and
Weather
I
and
don't know if it actually takes more time because there's so much infrastructure there that's gonna stay the same, whereas a new plant, you're building from the ground up and that may, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say that it's definitely from a construction and ongoing management of operations, that building a new plant next door is going to be significantly easier and more efficient.
Yeah, so that's asking, do you value the overall cost of everything versus how easy you want the construction to be? It might take a little bit longer. There might be some risks on meeting, TCEQ effluent requirements. But once that's done, so be it. You're still dealing with the overall cost. Which one's more important to you? That's kind of another way to look at it.
Yeah, it depends on how much the price difference is.
Yeah.
It depends on how much the price.
these are Sophie's choices. We get it. So it's like,
If it's millions and millions cheaper to repair or replace in place, then, and it's gonna take an extra 6 months, I would take the money.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
good news is no matter how we rank this, we're going to see the data. We're going to see the numbers and whatever the recommendations come back, we're not relying upon that. We can look directly in there and say, but if we just do that versus that, you're flipping this. I mean, so this is just about blind prioritization, Sophie's choice. So are we saying 5?
I would.
5.
Anybody disagree?
Yeah. 5.
You like 5? Okay.
All right. Life cycle cost and community impact.
What is the community impact?
I,
Specifically, but it's one of the things that was clarified during this week was during construction. During construction, that's the big kind of differentiator. It's odor, noise, odor, noise, aesthetics during construction. During construction, it's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
There's going to be more noise. If they're building on top of the old plant, there could be bigger.
Yeah, you're not saying long-term.
Correct.
That it's more odorous
Do
or
you
whatever.
care, is it more important to you, again, the overall cost or what the surrounding community has to deal, right?
I mean, sorry, but
I'm not
Me neither.
convinced that the construction process is going to be overly burdensome to the neighbors. And
Yeah.
I would have to actually go back and look at the plot to see how close the neighbors really even are.
I don't think there's a lot of neighbors. You have a gas station, you have woods, and you have a stream, and then
We have those
ditch, and-
squeaky neighbors that were upstream at the road, whatever.
There's some at the top, there's some at the north and.
That complain.
on the side,
Yeah,
yeah.
not a lot.
very,
And
very
again,
low impact.
to your point, not a lot. Like we're impacting probably a
They're the ones
small
that
number of
complained
people.
and we
Yeah.
got, we proved it was their own sewage,
Life
right?
cycle.
Right.
All right.
So we're in one.
And I do, but I mean, it's-
On that
I
specific
think it-
question is what you.
it'll be
invited.
Yeah,
care.
no, absolutely. I'm just saying, it's not
Care.
forever, right? If it was
Okay.
forever, then it's okay, but
We all put up
it
with
should
road
follow-
projects and we all
Yeah, it
put
should
up
follow-
with.
All right.
Might be a little bit dirty life cycle just for a while too.
Yeah, come to our percentage.
there's construction everywhere. You have to deal with that while the construction's going on. It is what it is.
All right, next one, operation and maintenance consideration versus use of existing infrastructure.
Back to this.
No, but we're comparing different apples.
All right, so.
I'm more concerned about the operations and maintenance.
You are? Why? I'm just asking.
Cost,
So in your mind, the
operating costs, operating like maybe consistency of
the complexity, the managing of ongoing solutions post whatever we do versus squeezing a nickel to get 6 pennies out of the existing infrastructure is a more, because it's a longer term risk than the short term of, okay.
I'd agree with that.
So vote, do we think 2?
All right, 2.
Anybody disagree?
Yeah.
Don't be bashful if you don't.
No, this is good.
I'm gonna vote 2 on the next one too, because I'm not even sure how much we have to really discuss that.
Operations and maintenance consideration versus safety. I mean, I like,
The safety concerns.
Yeah, so I'll fill in there. So the plant is gonna meet safety requirements. It's gonna have handrails. It's gonna have non-slip things on the floor. It's gonna have things avoiding people stepping over stuff. It's gonna have all those basics. But there are other things that you could design into the facility that could be additional safety measures. Chemicals is one of the examples they use here. And currently the plants utilize gaseous chlorine. You have a gaseous chlorine leak. If you do, and someone is in that, they die, period. You're not getting out of that.
Sniffers.
The alternative, there's a lot of, you have it now, and there's a lot of safety mechanisms in place for when they switch bottles out. I mean, there's a lot of safety.
Pressurized versus vacuum, the different.
Yeah, but the alternative that a lot of municipalities use is bleach instead of gaseous chlorine. So bleach, if a big, huge bleach tank busts,
Yeah,
it's just a cleanup.
yeah.
You could be standing in it and you're not gonna die.
Die.
It's not that concentrated. It's like bleach that It's a little bit more concentrated, but not to the point where it's gaseous chlorine. So that might have more cost associated with it because it's not as efficient as gaseous chlorine, and you're gonna need more of it, and it's a little bit less efficient. But it's safer.
Yeah, it is.
I don't have any doubt that,
Your
that
basic safety needs are gonna be met.
I
Yeah.
would just say,
That's
I
the
think
growth
that
we
all
have
safety
is-
is gonna get all the due care and attention that it deserves,
Yeah.
and that nobody's gonna risk the safety of their employees.
Number two.
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 Okay.
All right. Operations and maintenance versus constructability and sequencing. Keith, what's your opinion?
I would say two, because I think the constructability and sequencing is something that can be planned out and managed by the construction company, but I'm kind of, if I read this right, I mean, I'm concerned about the overall costs and ongoing costs and ongoing
Yeah, that's what I hear.
reliability of the facility.
That's what I hear you too. I mean, it's less about the pain of the transitional phase versus the complexity that the new approach and infrastructure is going to bear on us for the next 40 years.
Good way.
Five is short term and two is, 50 years.
Yeah.
All right, so vote 2 or 5.
Two.
2. Cool. Next one, 2 or 6. I would say
Two.
2.
Yeah.
I'm with
Again, I love my community,
Yeah.
but I think there's very little impact.
And it's, temporary.
Yeah, and it should be
Yeah,
negative.
temporary.
And the weighting should reflect that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's,
Next one, 3 or 4. Ooh. I mean, I would say, again,
It's the safety in here.
yeah, because if you think about it, if you use of, if we introduce the variable of stressing more on squeezing more out of existing infrastructure, does safety concerns go up?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
that's a good
I
point.
don't know, but I still would hope that regardless of what anybody talks about.
We're
or does,
mitigating
that safety
safety.
is never gonna be taking a second seat to anything, that the safety will be looked after regardless.
Yeah, but what you just say basically makes an assumption that safety is paramount and it should be considered an underlying priority no matter what we're comparing it against. If I'm taking what your words say.
I'm saying that safety is going to be looked after no matter what. And we'll always approve, and if something comes up and they need to make a change or spend some money to improve safety, we're always going to approve that. But from this planning standpoint, to me,
So
I don't know, this is kind of a silly one.
well, I'm just gonna say it. So we were adamant that safety is more important than the overall cost of the entire 50-year, appreciated budget of the project. That was like, oh, well, that was almost, but we're saying the opposite now for if we're gonna leverage existing. So I want to make sure we're applying the same lens of criteria if we're looking at it. So if you're saying that safety is kind of just an expected price of poker and it's not something we need to wait, I don't disagree with you. My inclination would be, I'm more concerned about use of existing infrastructure and not discounting that we're blindly going to go buy a new car if we don't need a new car
Yeah.
versus expected safety is just, normal course of business and what we're doing. So, I mean, I don't want to talk about it anymore. If we all think 3, then let's just say 3.
I think
3. All right. 3.
3.
3 or 5.
I think 3.
I think 3.
I'm just giving you my gut reaction.
Yeah,
Three.
I'm with 3 as well.
Yes.
Kathy. 3.
All right. 3 or 6.
We love you, community, but I'm going to say 3.
Yeah.
Smile for the camera.
We promise we love you and
It's not easy.
You're not the minority in how it's going.
Okay.
But
Everybody has said similar,
but
We love y'all, but
the key here is
oh, you're done. You've made up your mind. You're just gonna call out what you
The
think.
last ones are really easy.
so
Okay.
this isn't plant 3. This is plant 1. right?
So, yeah,
So it is our community, but it is a different neighborhood
Yeah.
as well. So we want to make sure we also think about
Sure.
that neighborhood.
Yeah, if this was planned,
Right.
if this was our plan, I would our
Then we obviously we know, that area
a
better.
little more personal.
Right. But we still want to make sure that
Right.
we still want to make the right decision. That's correct. Exactly. So I just want to put that
Yeah.
there. So safety or constructability and sequencing.
Isn't that,
So, I
Um,
mean, again, I would say safety is something that we're always going to do.
I think in the
Right.
context of this project, I think we're concerned more about the impact.
Number
Yeah.
5,
Yeah.
Construction and sequencing.
okay? Safety or community impact.
Or
I say
safety.
safety more. Yeah.
And constructability versus community impact. 5. All right.
See, we got a rhythm there.
It's ready. Yeah, no, that's good. I think it's really healthy to talk your ideas out. I mean, that's what needed to happen. you know? Let me go through it, make sure I got it correct.
Yep.
Real quick. I'm just gonna go straight down. 1-1, 4-5, 1-2, 2-2, 2-3, 3-3, 5-4-5.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I,
Awesome.
Well, that's not what I thought it was gonna be.
well, we're looking at it together.
Perfect.
We need to turn these into you.
No, I've got your.
I've got the one of record.
I'll hold on to it until the end of January with the other districts.
We'll
be good.
Eric, is it acceptable to ask, are our ideas similar to others or quite different or somewhat similar?
Oh, I would say that yours is more similar to the north.
More similar than not?
But there was one that was very different than folks thought it would be.
Really?
Yeah. But yours is, I would say, on the average, more similar.
It stems to just to how people interpret.
Number 6 is not getting a whole lot of play. I'm not even sure if anyone picked it.
No.
1 and 3 are getting a lot of play.
In place and total cost.
But
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I don't think we actually have to make a motion on number 4, because we, just gave answers. And Brian's not here.
No.
Consider an authorized Carver Engineering recommendation of award for retail wastewater collection system rehabilitation year 2 and authorize WWA to proceed.
Yeah.
All right.
So to give you some background, particularly the new directors, a few years ago, across the Woodlands, WWA hired a engineering firm to do an analysis of the sewer system on the retail side. So the stuff that we do, that are your lines, not S-Trade stuff. So the smaller diameter stuff in the neighborhood, or neighborhoods. And they identified through smoke testing, televising the pipes, going in and looking at manholes, actually physically going in and testing and looking and analyzing. They came up with a number of things that needed to be addressed. Broken pipes, manholes that are leaking, things like that. And so there was a number of repairs that were contemplated at that point, and it was identified that for budgetary purposes, it would probably make best sense to not raise rates, to split it over 3 years or 3 phases. So a couple months ago, phase 1 was complete. While number 1 was under construction, phase 2 or year 2 was under design. And now year 2 has been bid. That's what this is today. And now phase 3 will start design, and that will theoretically be bid and go into construction after phase 2 is complete in a different budget cycle. So what you see before you, and TCEQ requires us to get an engineer's recommendation of award on a bid. So we received public bids. We publicly opened the bids. We received 2 bidders for the project for phase 2 or year 2. And ironically, the low bidder, number one is the contractor that completed phase one. So they're familiar with the people, they're familiar with the expectations, I assume, and that led them to give us a good bid. The bid, I don't know that in my career I've seen it this close on $1.5 million project, but it came within $1,000 of the estimate, engineer's estimate, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Except on our,
Yeah.
the Mud 39 was the outlier.
And by the way,
I mean, we're also the cheapest in the
Yeah.
yeah,
aggregate.
your
but-
share is only 136.5, 106.30. So the project was overall 1.4. And that was the other thing is to get some economies of scale across the.
Bundle it
you
all.
Bundle it up like we did. So Garber has reviewed the bids, reviewed the math on the bids, and they're making a recommendation to award the contract to Texas Pride Utilities in the amount of $1,446,083. They were the low bidder. Oh, excuse me, 1,447,008. And so I reviewed it and I don't have any issues with that. And so that would be the recommendation.
I have a question for you. When you have multiple bidders on here and they line item bid these and the contractor who has the, I guess, the leading bid or the preferred bid on any given line item where if there's if there's something that they bid that's an extreme outlier that looks like maybe they've made a mistake. I mean, do you go back and talk to them about it, or are we accepting this as 100%?
Yeah, we accept it as 100%. We can go back if we see something weird. That actually happened to me in my career, where they found a loophole and they figured out how to rig the system, so to speak, on me.
Yeah.
But that was 30 years ago. But nonetheless, it could happen if we saw something really weird. That we would bring it to their attention and then ask about it. But we can't compare line items to line items against the other guy. You can't do that specifically. So
Yeah.
I mean, you could ask them if they have a mistake in it. I mean, one of these items are 900% higher than bidder number 2. And to me, it looks like one of the two made a mistake.
I'll tell you the thing.
And so you can't go back and have them rebid it, but you can, I mean, maybe not rebid it, but if they made a mistake, do we have to live with their mistake if they've bid it 900% higher than,
they have to live with their mistake.
well, they're 900% higher on a specific line item, then I would wonder if that's something that you can bring to their attention and see if they made a mistake.
Yeah, we usually don't try to scrutinize line item by line item because the overall bid was very advantageous for the owner.
Go look at Mud 39, like A is 33.50, the other one was 33.675. They were almost within
Yes.
$600. And the thing I took issue is like the engineer estimate was like, should be about 14 grand. And both of the bidders came out and they were like, it's like 34,000. So I just find that interesting because we're down here at the bottom of the first page, Mud 39 total.
Yeah.
We only have like,
I misspoke. You weren't 100. You're 33,000.
yeah, we were 33,000. We were the cheapest little one. But look at both of them and then versus that, we had one of the highest variances from the engineer estimate versus, and then if you look in the details, they were within $600 of each other, but they have some vastly different line items. But in the aggregate, they were within gnats of each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you, Eric. I think that when you look at the kind of is the reasonableness of it across the different items and stuff. Not quite sure why one thinks it's $8 grand and the other thinks it's 5 and one thinks it's.
There's one of them here that one bidder bid 7,000 and change and one bid like 29,000 and change on the same item. And it makes me think that one of the two made a mistake.
Or one values the line item easier or harder for them to do.
Right.
Maybe they got to go hire a sub to do that. The other guy has their own. I mean, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah,
that come into that. If we felt like it was either a math error or something that would have significant impact to the owner, to us, then we would question them on it and say, hey, are you sure on this? But there's enough, this is normal, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So we voting,
Just to accept the recommendation of award and proceed.
can I get a motion?
Yes.
We vote?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? All right. Number 6, discuss the tie-in to District Ditch from the RV park in Glen Eagles neighborhood.
Any developments there?
I intended to take this off, but it's still on, so I'll just give a brief update. We started running the ditches. We started with 39 a couple weeks ago. Kim and I and Mike and Randy. And so we've seen, as we turn that corner, kind of what the status of the RV park is. In the meantime, one of the things, so I think the last time we spoke, TxDOT had said, no objection. Howard Hughes had kind of said no objection. And so we're really down to kind of buttoning this thing up. But in order to do that, what would likely have to happen is 39 would need to likely enter into an encroachment agreement that would spell out their terms of what they're responsible for and what 39 would be responsible for. But when we looked at the land, who actually owns the land under the ditch, typically when a development happens, the developer, they own the land, they build everything, and then they start conveying the land over to the owner, whether it's a homeowner or the MUD or whatever. And usually on ditches, sometimes it takes a little longer, but that ditch didn't get conveyed to 39 officially. So that ditch needs to get conveyed.
Still owned by the developer?
Correct. So that ditch needs to be conveyed to 39. Until that happens, we can't really start
We
negotiating.
can't do anything.
Right.
It's not us.
So I'm working with Brian and we'll come back to you with some documents that he's gonna need to draw up.
So we would have to receive it, take ownership.
And
And then,
then you can start negotiating.
Okay.
How you want to deal with it. Obviously, you've been maintaining it for, forever, but that's what needs to happen next. So they are in operation. They do not have a tie-in currently. So the illegal tie-in that they had before they corrected that. They resubmitted drawings that have a different alternative. We've reviewed that. We have no objection to that. So I think everything's starting to queue up to a resolution, but we've got to just dot the i's and get it all cleaned up. So no action today. That was just more of an update.
Who would stay there?
There's some nice rigs in there, by the way.
It's kind of surprising to
I've
me.
got a travel trailer and there's some really nice ones in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
Quiet,
interesting
it's a
area.
quiet little place that they're hidden back at the end of the road and in the trees, and
Yeah.
it's probably pretty peaceful back there, I'm sure. Except for the motorcycles.
we had some members reach out about some questions about maintenance in the ditch and some things. Do we need to put that on agenda for next month, or how do we just need to talk to you offline?
It's not on the agenda today.
So we can't, yeah.
I already mentioned a minute ago that we've run them.
Okay.
We have a lot of information to share with
You got a punch list? Okay.
you. Well, we need to have a talk.
We have some very observant community members, and I think we know that we need to have a conversation.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's,
don't think that anyone's naked eye could see some of this and
Okay.
know what, something wrong.
So can we add that to?
Yeah, we'll add that to the agenda.
Now we gotta wait to find out what it is.
well, good news is the meetings in January are going to be a little bit earlier, right?
That's the good news.
So look at that. Look at that. All right. Without anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 12:55.
Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Merry